Hi, welcome to Sense 27. This is crazy because we are halfway through our 54 senses. I actually am so shocked by that. It's crazy. We're already halfway through. It seems like we just started this. Pretty cool. I'm holding Latte because people come up my stairs and then he barks at them for extended periods of time. So I'm going to just kind of hold him on my lap and keep him cozy and safe so he doesn't bark. So go ahead and do your journal work, and then let's talk about this sense 27, which is sense of fear, dread of injury, death, or attack. So isn't it interesting to think of this as a sense, right? I think going through all of these senses really opens at least my eyes to how in touch with the now, how in touch with reality I really am all the time, or at least my body is. And this is one that everybody's familiar with, this sense. We may have experience also, I definitely do, I would imagine you do too, with getting an intuitive hit of like a danger or an injury or something, like a foreboding or just knowing to get out of there, basically, whatever that is. Okay, we're gonna try it. Um, for instance, like you just move your car to the next lane and then someone comes like ramming through and would have hit you or something like that. I think most of us have had experiences where there's a knowing without really any. It's hard to look and see how would I have known to do that, right? Intuition. Our intuition tells us these things. So. And that might even actually be before you feel a sense of fear. You're just like knowing to do a thing. So, please don't bark, Latte. I wanted to talk about just for a minute a way in which I have experienced this sense as very much a biological sense. So, not at all as any kind of intellectual process that's happening, which is another way we can experience dread or fear of injury or death um, without just knowing, oh, if I walk down this street at midnight and there's a crazy person running at me, like I might get hurt. Like that's pretty obvious. But if we get those intuitive hits, and then also this that I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure probably most moms can identify with this. So when my daughter was born, I don't remember when my son was born. It was so long ago. I don't remember if I experienced this. I don't know if it was because I was less connected to myself then, which I certainly was. But or if I hadn't, I don't remember it. I just talked to my niece the other day, who's just had two beautiful baby girls, twins, and she's experiencing this and feeling distressed about it. And I got to talk to her about it and the way that I experienced it as basically a biological event. So after I had my daughter, I would just see danger everywhere. My mind was always like 12 steps ahead. So, for instance, we lived in a fairly large house with a fairly large staircase with like a kind of balustrade, is what you call it, on the top, and there was a little room that had a half wall, and that's where I had my rocking chair and I had my books, and I would sit up there so I could be kind of connected to downstairs, but I would still be upstairs and out of the way, and she could sleep and we could have our own space. And her changing table was on the half wall, and there was probably this much room. And she was an infant; she couldn't even roll over, And even when she could, like it was a really long time before she could have like stood up and fallen over that half wall, a story and a half down into the entryway. But I was so hyper alert all the time on how that could happen Or if we were going down that large set of stairs, I was so careful because I was so aware of the possibility of slipping and falling while I was holding her. Those kinds of things. And it was really distressing. Like my niece is explaining, she's, feeling really distressed about like something happening to her partner. And her partner's response was, well, of course we actually really need each other right now. And so of course you're afraid of something happening to me. So, I mean, it makes sense biologically. Our children wouldn't survive if the parent who's taking care of that child, and, I was breastfeeding and very connected with her, up nights with her, our children wouldn't survive if we didn't have that sense of like looking ahead and being so attuned to what might happen to them, and that they might be injured in this or that way, or fall to their deaths, or all of those horrible things that for me, and I've heard this for other people, that the new mom mind is just like imagining, and it's terrifying and it's disturbing. But I think it's also normal, and it's a biological function, and it's a sense, it's a sense that's keeping us attracted towards conditions of safety and survival for our infants. So that's one that is maybe not necessarily about ourself, but it's kind of a community survival or a species survival sense. And yeah, so I thought that one was very interesting because it's one I've experienced very intensely as a very real phenomenon and a very real sense that I'm sure is brought on by hormones and all kinds of brain changes that happen when you have a baby. But yeah, so that's my input on this sense today. And I just want to have for our exercise today, just do some journaling and do some reflections in your wild body about maybe some times that you've experienced dread or fear of injury or fear of death, and whether or not you could trace that back to anything, or whether, and I think this is often the case, that intuition is one thing. Sometimes we have no way of knowing, but I think in a lot of times when we experience dread, we're actually picking up from our 54 plus senses all of these little messages that are combining and kind of coalescing into this fear or dread or like get out of here that we need to pay attention to, that we might not be able to actually intellectually deduce down to, oh, it was because of this. It might have been because of a combination of those attractions away from whatever is feeling dangerous, that kind of thing. So, as I've said on the last couple, this one can also be one where we're experiencing something where there actually isn't really a very high chance of injury or death, but we have attached some kind of traumatic experience to what we're experiencing, so we're bringing in from the past some feelings, or maybe even just from imagining or seeing a show, or anything. Maybe if you've seen at some kind of formative period in your development, some show about a plane crash, for instance, or heard about that, or a relative died in a plane crash or something. Obviously, every time we get on a plane, there's a chance that it could crash and we could be injured or die. Same with getting in a car. Same with walking down the street, but generally, like, air travel is very safe. I believe it's much safer than traveling in your car. So something like that, people who have a fear of flying are bringing something in that's kind of heightening that sense, but might not be directly related to actually just what's going on in the now. So that would be an example of one of those things where we're bringing trauma in, and we always kind of want to take a look and see if there's a repetitive pattern coming up that's sort of keeping us from doing what we want to be doing because we have this fear. But that's something different. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that sense in the moment and it really being connected to our environment, connected to reality and what's happening in the moment. So, yeah, just reflect on that in your journal. Let me know if you have any comments, as always. And sending love. Don't forget to do your 1 to 10, and I'll see you tomorrow.